What's up guys and girls, today I'm going to run through some optimised F122 force feedback settings for the new Logitech Pro Racing Wheel. This wheel has just launched and is a direct drive wheel from Logitech. Yep, you heard that right. Logitech has released a direct drive wheel. Finally! I've created a review for this wheel, so go over and check that out if you want to see if this wheel is any good or a bit pants. And I'll leave a link in the description below and a card for the review up in the top corner now. But back to the F122 wheel settings, because that's what you're all here for. So these settings are my optimised force feedback settings for this wheel on all platforms. I've spent a fair bit of time with this new direct drive wheel, and I've been playing a lot of F122 as you can imagine. So in this video I'll run through my optimised in-game force feedback settings for F122, and I'll also run through the G-Hub settings for the wheel itself. But let's start with the F122 in-game settings first. First thing to do, go ahead and turn vibration and force feedback on, otherwise you won't feel any force feedback at all. Then set your vibration force feedback strength to 100. We want to leave this at 100 with this wheel because we want to feel almost all of those 11 Nm of torque. Then for on-track effects, go 35. This was really the magic number to feel enough of the road bumps and everything without being overwhelmed by force feedback. Then set the rumble strip effects to 35 and the off-track effects to 25. If you go much higher than this, you're going to have your wheels shaking about all over the place every time you go on the curb, which is kind of just annoying more than anything. So keep these two settings relatively low. Then for the wheel damper, go with 45. This was just about right. It removed some of the horrible vibration and oscillating when you kind of almost let go of your wheel, but it's not too strong that it makes your wheel feel like you're kind of stuck in honey and it's really hard to move. Then I set understeer enhance off, but if you're just getting used to the game, I'd recommend keeping this on. What it will do, it'll make the wheel go really light every time you kind of start to understeer, and then you can really kind of get to know where the limit of grip is and when understeer is likely to happen. And when you're pretty confident with it, turn this setting off. And then finally, wheel rotation, leave that at 360 degrees. And then we can head over to our G-Hub settings, or we can change them on the wheel itself. If you want to change it on the wheel itself, you can do it on the OLED display that's on the wheelbase itself. Simply click the button that's to the right of the OLED display to access the settings menu. And then you can scroll using your rotary encoder on the steering wheel to scroll up and down through the settings. Click or push the rotary encoder in, and then you'll go into a sub menu, and again use the rotary encoder to scroll up and down to increase or decrease the setting. Then once you're happy, click the rotary encoder in and continue on to change the rest of the settings until you're happy. So starting at the top with the sensitivity, I set this to 48. What this does, this basically affects the linearity curve of your steering input. When this is set to 50, your steering will have 1-to-1 linearity, meaning that if you rotate your steering wheel 45 degrees, your in-game steering wheel will rotate the same. If you lower the sensitivity, you'll have to turn the wheel a little bit more at the start of its rotation to apply the same in-game input. Increase the sensitivity and you won't have to rotate the wheel as much, as it'll be a lot more sensitive at the start of the rotation. I'd recommend leaving this close to 50 or just below like I have. Lowering it will simply give you a little bit more control over fine inputs. The operating range or the angle is essentially your steering lock, so just like we have in game, keep this at 360 degrees. And then for the dampener, I set this to 12. This is much like the in-game setting. It will increase the feeling of weight in your wheel, making it slightly harder and firmer to rotate. This can remove some unnecessary shaking or vibration, especially when driving in a straight line or if you start to loosen your grip on the steering wheel. But try not to apply too much dampener, otherwise your wheel will start to feel incredibly sluggish. And then the strength setting, it kind of does what it says on the tin. This will increase or decrease your maximum strength. So you can see here I've got it set to 11 Nm, making use of the full range of torque available from this direct drive wheel. If this is a little bit too strong or kind of makes the wheel too heavy or too violent, you can lower this down. Although I wouldn't recommend going much lower than about 5 Nm, otherwise you'll start to lose kind of some detail and the wheel will just feel too light in general. And then we've got the force feedback filter. I've got this set to 5 and I've disabled the auto force feedback filter setting. What this setting does is it kind of dictates how much force feedback is being filtered out. Higher settings will filter out finer vibrations and subtle details in game. These could include minor road bumps and really small vibrations. If you lower this down to 1, you'll feel all of the force feedback that's being produced. This will be noisier than not filtering out any details at all. While this will give you the most detailed amount of force feedback, it will also make the wheel very energetic at times and can be uncomfortable to race with. I find a setting around 5 is the sweet spot. If you go lower than this, the force feedback becomes too busy and noisy. Higher than this and you'll start to lose some vital details. But if you are unsure what setting to go for, you can enable the auto filter. This will remove the option instead. It allows the wheel's software to dictate how much force feedback is being filtered out. And then for the audio effects, I've set this to 20. What this changes is the use of True Force. True Force allows the wheel to pick up on audio cues and in-game physics such as engine revs, gear shifts, on-track vibrations and tyre slip, those sort of things. It will then pass those details and present them as additional force feedback, vibration and rumbles. This is a fantastic feature as it helps you feel much more of how the car is actually behaving. Increasing this setting will allow more and more true force feedback to be presented to you. This can increase vibrations of force feedback when riding over curbs, pushing the car too hard, or when revving your engine. And that'll do it for this settings video. Remember, these settings are only a guide. They are what worked well for me throughout my running with this Logitech wheel in F122, but they may not be perfect for you guys. Use these settings as a starting point and don't be afraid to play about and adjust them at will. As always, if you find this content helpful, hit that like button as it will really help this video be shown to others. And also drop a comment below for the YouTube algorithm. Let me know if you're considering buying this wheel and what you think of it in the comments below, and also what you think of these settings if you already have the wheel. But until next time guys, I'll see you on track.